Okay, so um, let's unpack this. Imagine a personality type that, feels like a complete walking contradiction.
Right, a paradox.
Exactly. On one side, you have this intense, almost volatile emotional energy. I mean, we're talking about feeling things deeply. But then on the exact opposite side, you have cold, calculated strategy.
And society usually tells us those two things are like oil and water.
Yeah, exactly. You're either the emotional, messy one or you're the logical, robotic one. There's no in between.
We really do love putting people into those neat little boxes, don't we? The classic head versus heart dichotomy.
We do. But what if they aren't opposites? What if for a very specific group of people, the emotion is actually the fuel that powers the logic?
That is exactly what we are looking at today.
Yes, we are diving into a profile today that proves this paradox actually exists. We're pulling from the Max Energy ME80 personality system, and we're looking specifically at the FWWN profile, the strategic attacker.
It's such a fascinating profile, and honestly, it's one that I think is deeply, deeply misunderstood by most people.
I agree. So listen, if you have ever felt like your anger or your frustration wasn't just a distraction, but was actually like a high-tech radar system telling you exactly where to strike, well, pull up a chair.
You're in the right place.
We are looking at the 023 FWWN report today.
Yeah.
Our mission for this deep dive is to really figure out how this concept of calculated aggression works, and more importantly, how to keep it from burning your entire life down.
That distinction right there, calculated aggression. That is the headline here. We're looking at source material from the Max Energy ME80 assessment, and it defines this personality not by, how nice they are, but by how devastatingly effective they are at dismantling problems.
Okay, so let's start with the system itself. We're looking at the Max Energy ME80. For anyone who isn't familiar with this isn't your standard are you introverted or extroverted kind of test. It's about energy flow.
Exactly. The ME80 system looks at how energy actually moves through a person, how it activates, how it processes internally, and then how it manifests in the real world.
Got it.
So today, we are zeroing in on one specific energy signature, the FWWN.
Let's get into the identity part of the report. The hero section, as they call it, labels this type the strategic attacker.
Yeah.
And I just have to read the core declaration because, it sounds like something straight out of a military briefing.
It really does.
It says, this type strikes with calculated aggression, turning emotion and intel into piercing attacks.
It is very aggressive language, for sure.
Piercing attacks. It sounds almost hostile.
It does sound hostile, but we need to strip away that combat metaphor for just a second so we can see the actual psychology underneath. The source material defines this as a tactical personality.
Okay.
The key insight isn't that they are angry people who just want to pick fights. It's about the mechanism of how they process reality. The report says they use emotions to complete a target lock, and then they use strategy to tear through whatever is causing the gridlock.
Wait, let's stop right there because that is a massive concept. Emotions to complete target lock. Usually, in business or leadership or whatever, we are told to put our emotions in a box so we can actually see clearly. This report is suggesting the complete opposite.
Precisely. And I'll tell you, this is the hardest thing for other personality types to understand about the strategic attacker. For the FWWN, emotion isn't noise.
It's not a distraction.
No, it's data. It is literally their radar.
So when they feel a spike of frustration or, say, suspicion, it's not just a tantrum.
Not at all. Think of a submarine. When the sonar pings, it's detecting an anomaly in the water. When a strategic attacker feels that spike of emotion, it's a signal that they have detected a structural weakness or a threat.
Wow.
They've found the problem. The emotion is just the early warning alert system. Once that radar locks on, their dual rationality, which is their logic and their strategy, kicks in to decide exactly how to fire the torpedo.
That completely reframes the behavior. So while everyone else in the room is trying to calm down and just keep the peace, the strategic attacker is essentially saying, I feel something is off, I've located the target, and now I'm loading the solution.
Exactly. And that naturally leads us to their control mechanism and their global vision. The report highlights something super interesting about how they handle pressure.
Okay, lay it on me.
You know how most people get frantic when the heat turns up? They just scramble.
Oh yeah, spray and pray.
Yeah.
Just do something, anything, to make the stress stop.
Right. But the source notes that for the FWWN, pressure actually causes their attention to rapidly narrow. They go into this highly precise pressure-applying attack mode.
So they don't just lash out.
They don't have an emotional outburst just to vent. They calculate within the pressure.
The source uses the phrase structural weak point. They ensure every strike targets a structural weak point to advance the situation.
That is so surgical.
It is. It's like, why yell at the entire department when you know it's Dave's outdated spreadsheet policy that's bottlenecking the whole system? You just attack the policy.
That is the intelligence-driven attack core trait right there. They prioritize effectiveness over expression. They aren't trying to express their feelings to you. They are using their feelings to diagnose the illness, and then they use their logic to cut it out.
I really want to get under the hood of this engine. The Max Energy system uses this concept called the energy matrix to explain the internal wiring. It breaks it down into these layers, IP, IQ, and EQ.
Right.
But looking at the notes, these terms don't seem to mean what they usually mean in pop psychology.
You're absolutely right, and that's a crucial distinction for listeners to grasp. In the ME80 system, these are specific energy states. Think of them almost like different gears in a car's transmission.
Okay, I like that analogy.
If we want to really understand the strategic attacker, we have to walk through this assembly line of how a raw impulse becomes a physical action.
Let's trace the signal then. It starts at the IP layer, the inner value layer.
Think of the IP layer as the ignition, the energy drive activation. This is where the impulse originates. For the strategic attacker, this is that deep-seated, gut-level drive to identify and confront.
The spark.
Yes. It's the part of them that cannot just let a broken problem sit there. It demands a resolution. It's the spark that says, hey, something is wrong here.
So the engine is running. The spark has happened. Then we move to the next gear, the IQ layer. Now, normally IQ means intelligence quotient, like how well you score at a math test. But the report calls this the emotional activation layer. Which is honestly a bit confusing.
It is a bit counterintuitive at first glance. In this specific system, the IQ layer is functioning as risk and consequence judgment. It's the scanner. So the IP drive says go, but the IQ layer immediately scans the landscape. It asks, if I strike here, what happens? What is the fallout? Is this safe? Is this actually smart?
So it's tactical intelligence. It's pure risk assessment.
Correct. It's the filter that prevents them from just being reckless cannons. It's actively checking the battlefield.
Okay, so we have the drive at the IQ layer, then the risk scan at the IQ layer, then the signal moves to the EQ layer. And again, usually EQ is emotional intelligence, like empathy and reading the room. But here it's labeled the decision calculation layer.
Right. Here, EQ acts as the internal stabilizer. It provides emotional bearing and stability. While the IQ is busy calculating the risk, the EQ ensures the ship stays steady in the water.
It anchors them.
It keeps the emotional bearing so that the attack doesn't become chaotic or messy. It filters that raw drive into a cold, calculated decision.
I see. So it's not really about empathy for other people in this specific moment. It's about internal emotional regulation to ensure their aim is completely true.
Exactly. It prevents their hand from shaking while they are aiming the arrow.
And finally, you have the manifestation layer.
That's the energy releasing outward, the impact. By the time the energy actually reaches the real world, it has been sparked by value, risk assessed by IQ, stabilized by EQ, and now it hits as a highly precise action.
It's a fascinating assembly line. It actually explains why they can seem so quiet and observant one moment and then so terrifyingly decisive the next. They aren't hesitating at all. They're just processing through that matrix.
They are running the simulation in their head, and when they finally act, it's usually game over.
So that's the mechanics of it. Let's talk about the result. The deep analysis section of the report calls their core inner trait the intelligence-driven attack.
Which brings us right back to that radar analogy. The source explicitly says emotion isn't interference, it's the radar locking targets. I really want listeners to internalize that. If you are a strategic attacker listening to this, your feelings are your intelligence gathering system.
The process the report describes is really step-by-step. Step 1, rapidly gather clues under pressure. Step 2, judge structural gaps. Step 3, select the most effective angle of attack. It just feels so efficient.
Ruthlessly efficient. The report notes that they exchange minimal motion for maximum leverage effect. They do not want to waste energy fighting 100 little petty battles.
Right, they aren't micromanaging the conflict.
No, they want to find the one loose brick, the structural gap, that brings the entire wall down with one push.
That sounds incredibly effective, especially if you're in a crisis. But there is always a catch on this show. Living your life like a tactical missile system has to have a downside. You can't just target lock every single thing in your day.
It definitely has a downside. And the source material has a specific, almost ominous name for this shadow blind spot. They call it the Warfield tendency.
Warfield tendency. That implies they're living in a constant state of war.
Basically, yes. The essence of this blind spot is that when everything becomes warfare, exhaustion quietly accumulates.
Oh man, I can feel the burnout just hearing that sentence.
Think about it. If your primary way of engaging with the world is target lock and strategic attack, you start to see every environment as a battlefield. The report says they easily auto-translate normal discussions, cooperation, or even goodwill into offensive-defensive game theory.
So let's paint a picture for the listener. You're at a casual dinner party. A friend suggests a specific restaurant. The strategic attacker isn't thinking, oh, yum, pizza. They're thinking what?
They're thinking, why did they choose that specific location? Is it closer to their house? Are they trying to control the pace of the evening? What's the strategic advantage here? Are they maneuvering me?
That sounds absolutely exhausting to live with.
It is exhausting. They treat friends like opponents in a chess match. And the source points out a very dangerous downward spiral here. Because they're so hypersensitive to winning and losing, it becomes incredibly difficult for them to pause and just listen.
Because listening feels like yielding.
Exactly. Showing any vulnerability feels like exposing a weak flank to an enemy.
It's a complete self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it?
Completely. The report says this creates high-pressure cycles that eventually backfire on your own judgment. If you treat everyone around you like an enemy, eventually you create enemies where there were none. You force people into a defensive posture, which then simply proves your internal theory that they were against you all along.
This has to seriously impact their social life. I was reading the section on social relations, and it used this really poignant phrase. Sharpness creates distance.
It's the ultimate paradox of competence.
Mm-hmm.
The report says, you see clearly, but others feel locked onto first.
Locked onto. That's such an uncomfortable feeling for the person on the receiving end.
It really is. Imagine trying to have a casual coffee with someone, but you feel like they are actively scanning you for structural weaknesses. You feel judged, even if they aren't saying a word.
Yeah.
The report notes that to others, the strategic attacker is sharp, incisive, and basically impossible to ignore. They are the ones people flock to and rely on in a crisis because they are the only ones who dare to name the core issues.
Right. They are the ones who will finally say, the elephant in the room is that this entire project is failing, and John is the reason why.
And people love them for that clarity when the building is on fire. But the source says there is a mix of dependence and wariness.
They need you, but they fear you.
Yes. People rely on them to save the sinking ship, but that oppressive feeling makes people cautious in everyday life. It creates a massive barrier to intimacy. You are highly visible in the group. Everyone knows exactly who you are, but you are very difficult to truly approach.
It really is lonely at the top of the command center.
It can be very lonely, because to get close to someone, you have to lower your shields. And to the strategic attacker, lowering your shields is a fundamental tactical error.
So this is the personality profile. High precision, high strategy, but a real potential for social isolation. Where does this person actually thrive?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the commercial value, because obviously you do not hire this person to run the corporate wellness retreat.
No, probably best to keep them away from the trust falls. The report defines their ultimate business superpower as precision breakthrough capacity.
Precision breakthrough.
Yeah.
I like that. It sounds like a very expensive consulting service.
It is incredibly valuable. If you have a complex situation where everything is just gridlocked bureaucracy, infighting, confusing data, you send in the strategic attacker. They thrive in multi-party competition and high-pressure negotiation.
The source lists some specific recommended career fields. Strategic assault and negotiation is #1.
Also, high-pressure decision-making and risk handling. They are excellent in roles where the stakes are incredibly high and the path forward is blocked by deep structural issues, not just surface-level symptoms.
It also mentions complex game theory type management roles, which makes perfect sense. If you naturally see the entire world as game theory, you might as well get a paycheck for it.
Precisely. And precise pressure transformation tasks. Think of a massive corporate turnaround. A company needs to pivot hard and fast to avoid bankruptcy. They need someone to identify exactly what needs to change, which departments to cut, which products to kill, and then apply the precise pressure to make it happen immediately.
They don't have time for feelings.
Right. The strategic attacker doesn't get bogged down in the sentimentality of, oh, but we've always done it this way. They see the structural failure and they strike.
It really seems like the key for this strategic attacker is just finding the right environment. If you put them in a role that requires constant, soft, aimless socializing, they will likely destruct or self-destruct.
They will absolutely become the villain in that story, but you put them in a war room and they are the hero. Context is everything for the FWWN.
So we've covered the mechanics, the incredible strengths, and the shadow traps. As we wrap up this deep dive into the FWWN profile, what is the final piece of wisdom from the source material? How does the strategic attacker actually evolve? Because living in warfield mode forever sounds completely unsustainable.
It is completely unsustainable. And the conclusion in the report offers a very powerful pivot for them. It says, when strategic attackers learn to distinguish necessary assaults from transformable fields, letting sharpness become a tool rather than a continuous confrontation stance, strategy evolves from short-term victory into long-term domination.
Distinguish necessary assaults from transformable fields. That is deep. Can we just unpack that for a second?
It means you don't have to attack every single thing. Some things can just be lived. Some fields just need to be cultivated, not conquered. Not every conversation is a high-stakes negotiation. Not every problem is a literal threat to your survival.
It's about realizing that your sharpness is just a tool in a toolbox. You don't have to walk around holding the hammer all day looking for nails.
Exactly. When they learn to turn the radar off, or at least learn not to act on every single blip that crosses the screen, they move from just winning isolated battles to actually winning the peace.
I love that.
That shift from short-term victory to long-term domination isn't about crushing everyone in your path. It's about sustainable success. It's about building a team that genuinely respects you, not a team that just fears you.
That is a fantastic place to land. For all the strategic attackers listening right now, your radar is a superpower. It allows you to see things no one else sees and fix things no one else can fix. Just remember, not everything that moves on the screen is a threat. Sometimes it's just a friend buying you pizza.
Well said. Use the radar, don't let the radar use you.
We want to remind you that this deep dive analysis comes directly from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It's a truly fascinating system that really gets into the nitty-gritty of the energy behind why we do what we do.
It really is. If you want to dig deeper into your own profile, or if you just want to understand the very intense people around you better, you should definitely check out their resources.
You can visit their official website at www.maxenergylife.com. Or, if you're on social media, you can search for Max Energy or Meta Energy on Facebook to find their community and dive into more of this personality psychology.
It's highly recommended. It will change how you see your own decisions.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Here's a final thought to leave you with. What if the greatest strategic victory you can ever achieve is realizing you don't actually have to fight at all? Stay sharp, use your strategy for good, and we will catch you on the next one.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.